So just settling in. And just sort of adopting a posture that's supportive of your practice. Typically, we encourage people to sit upright, but if that's not functionally possible or helpful for you, you can recline, and you can begin by closing your eyes or just lowering your gaze. Or turning the attention inward. Letting the body soften. Just a sense of settling. Relaxing the jaw. Releasing shoulders. Softening the belly. And letting the attention just move through the body, just kind of scanning the different sensations as you mentally arrive in the present moment. And just feeling the body breathing. And aware of your present moment, mind state, mood. What are you coming to this meditation with? What are you bringing with you? We can have the idea that in meditation we are going to create some particular mind state, some special mind state. And even if that can happen, at first we're going to have to move through the existing mind states. So just breathing with the felt experience of this moment. And feeling the sensations of breath at the nostrils, the belly, the chest. Where is it easiest for you to feel the breath, to let the attention come to rest? Might be a particular point of sensation, like the nostrils, the tip of the nose, or it might be a more general area, like the movement of the chest and belly. It's not so important that we pay attention to the breath at some special place, or just having a way of being with the breath that feels natural, comfortable. The breath just functions as an anchor to the present moment. We might find thoughts carrying us away or streaming through the mind. We don't struggle with that. Just allow whatever's arising to come and go, to move through the mind. And gently come back to the breath. This practice guides us towards viewing experience in less personal terms, seeing not so much the story of thoughts, but the process and construction of thoughts. We start to understand that that which appears in the mind is not an expression of an individual self, but rather the manifestation of conditioned phenomena coming together. That is, feelings arise, perceptions arise, memories out of the feelings and perceptions, ideas form, beliefs, and then stories connected, ideas of past or future. But as we tune into this, become more sensitive to this process, we become less deluded by the thoughts that arise, less fooled by them. We're not so ready to believe everything that appears in the mind. It's like pulling the curtain back on the magician's trick. Seeing that it's all an illusion. All right. I was thinking that I might ask Debbie or someone to cover for tonight, but I kind of need to have this group to check in with and to just, sit together. It helps me. Feels like there's just a lot of energy around in the air, Yeah, as I said, at the beginning, I went yesterday to Abhayagiri Monastery to visit with Ajahn Pasano. This was a visit which we had planned a couple months ago when I asked him if I could come and talk to him about the Anapanasati Sutta. And that's the Buddhist teaching on mindfulness of breathing that I've been talking about a lot for the past year and I've been writing about. And so it was really, really gratifying to meet with him. So if you live in Northern California, you really should visit the monastery sometime. You can actually just visit anytime for the day. And you're supposed to get in touch with them, let them know you're coming. But, they have one meal each day at 11 o'clock. And, you bring some little food and you eat. And if you get there, it depends when you get there, but they have different practices during the day. And there's particular days during the month when they actually have more public events. Their daily schedule is, focused around their own practice. But on the 30th of this month, they're having a big festival. And maybe Angela, you could put in the link to that on their page if you find it. So every year after their 3-month rains retreat, the traditional rains retreat, they have which is held during the rainy season in India. So it's not it doesn't quite match up with California weather, but they have this festival in which traditionally the lay people come and give a lot of offerings, and the sort of center of that event is that one monk gets a new robe, and that robe, like the lay people will bring this bolt of cloth, and then the monks have 24 hours in which to dye it and sew it, or it might be sew it and dye it. And it has to be prepared within 24 hours. That's the rule. So the monks will stay up all night doing this, getting the robe, and and they always have to decide who's got the most raggedy robe to give them the robe, and some monks who are like really into being really raggedy will be like, oh no, I don't need a robe. And people are like, look, dude, you need a new robe. That thing's falling apart. Because there can be this sort of striving to be the most, ascetic kind of monk. But so I noticed when I was up there yesterday, they had a whiteboard with the daily schedule, and it said something like 4:30 p.m. robe sewing practice. Which I had never seen that before, but I thought that was pretty cool because, you got to learn how to do this. It's a skill. And, I don't know how many monks are living there right now. I saw maybe a dozen or so. And some of them are quite new. They might have only been a monk for a couple of years or a year. But I think it's really interesting if you are interested in Buddhism to see this ancient tradition being lived out, and sort of see the sort of mixture of modernity and ancient Indian, ancient Buddhist practices. Their facility is fantastic. They started out with a small property. Well, actually, it's a good sized property that was actually given to Ajahn Sumedho by the Mahayana, the Chan master, Master Hua, who was the founder of the city of 10,000 Buddhas, and among other places, there's a monastery. I think it's called like Golden Mountain Monastery, maybe, in San Francisco, and then the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. Anyway, Master Hua was a completely different tradition. The Abhayagiri is the Thai forest tradition, and Master Hua was Chinese and came out of the Chan Pure Land tradition. But Buddhist monks kind of respect each other, whatever the tradition. And he had this land, and he gave it to Ajahn Sumedho to start a monastery almost 30 years ago now. I think it opened in 1995, and they just had a couple shacks, a couple of buildings in the beginning, and now it's just a beautiful facility with lovely, beautiful meditation hall and statues and really nice offices and library, and then the monks live up on the hillside in little kutis. They're called the little shacks they have. I was reflecting yesterday, Abhayagiri, which means fearless mountain, which is a really appropriate name because they are on a mountain. But it's actually, Abhayagiri was actually an ancient monastery in Sri Lanka. And so it's actually named after this ancient monastery. And the monastery in England, Amaravati, was like the competing monastery. These two monasteries in Sri Lanka sort of competed for the blessings of the king or the royalty, and tried to get the support, and so it's interesting that I think Ajahn Sumedho named them both, that they named them after these ancient monasteries. Amaravati, the derivation of that word is Amaro, or Amara means deathless, so it's like the deathless realm is what that means, which is a synonym for enlightenment. So all of this is just, fun facts. I'm very fortunate to have a relationship with Ajahn Pasano, who's been a monk for almost 50 years himself, and he's actually my age, and he's Canadian. And he and Ajahn Amaro were the co-abbots of Abhayagiri for many years. And then Ajahn Amaro went off back to England to be the abbot of Amaravati. But Ajahn Amaro is this very outgoing, articulate storyteller, and very charismatic. And Ajahn Pasano is very low-keyed, and really he's not somebody who even really wants to be out there teaching a whole lot. Quiet, a simple monk, And so he was saying yesterday, he was talking about this woman who was coming up to visit, and saying that when Ajahn Amaro left, she was bereft. Because she loved Ajahn Amaro, and she really didn't think much of Ajahn Pasano. And he said, but now she's gotten to know me. Now she's gotten to appreciate me. And I said, I know. I mean, that's kind of the personality. He's the quiet storm guy. The one that you realize when you get to know him. Oh, this guy is very deep. So he's a wonderful person to sit and talk Dharma with. And he's particularly interested in and practices the Anapanasati Sutta. And he has a great chapter in his book, Nourishing the Roots. It's a chapter about the Anapanasati Sutta. And the sutta, the main part of the sutta has 16 steps that cover body, feeling, mind, and then insight practices. So 4 sections. it's one of the most famous suttas in Theravada Buddhism, and it's a meditation instruction sutta. So it's one you kind of go to, like, how am I supposed to meditate, and what did the Buddha really say, and what did he want us to do? And so it really gives you great instruction, and yet it also it can be interpreted in many different ways. Many of the different instructions can, there can be a lot of questions we ask, because typically with these ancient suttas, they're not written in the same kind of language as a, Jack Kornfield book. They're very dry, and they're talking about sometimes very technical things. So, after I sat a retreat last winter, where I was kind of using this chapter from Ajahn Pasano's book as my guide and working with this practice. And after doing that, I thought I'd really like to write about this and see if I can bring something helpful to it. And so I had some other books on the sutta, and I found one or two others. So I'm working with 3 or 4 different books and kind of reading different teachers, Thich Nhat Hanh and Buddhadasa Bhikkhu, Venerable Analayo, as well as Pasano, and then Bhikkhu Bodhi's talks on it. And sort of, trying to, what's the term, square the circle, whatever that means, sort of make some, bring these different approaches together, and also kind of talk about the divergence, and then bring, sort of talking about what these Buddhist masters say, and then kind of trying to bring my own reflection, my own experience to bear on that. And I got to a point a couple months ago where I felt overwhelmed by it. And I didn't have a lot of time to write, and I just started to kind of get very backed up on it, like, I don't know about this. So meeting with Ajahn Pasano was really, really helpful, because his approach is very pragmatic. And whereas some of the things I've been reading are very scholarly and technical, and, when you sit down to meditate, the technical stuff only takes you so far, right? In order for meditation to really be meaningful for us and to help us, it has to be kind of organic, which is why we each have to find kind of our own way of practicing. You listen to instructions and you see that there's different instructions, different people have different approaches, and then you sit for a while, and I know many of you have gone on retreats and have a lot of meditation experience, and some of you not so much, but when you've had a bunch of experience, you start to see, like, this is kind of an intuitive process. When you sit down, the mind is not this box that you can just walk in and, like, click this and turn that and pour in this. It doesn't work in a mechanical way. And so you're trying to take language which functions in a very boxed up way, it's that, and apply that to these really amorphous experiences. And actually, amorphous is a word that Ajahn Pasano used yesterday. And we actually managed to talk through the entire 16 steps yesterday, but there are certain things that really stood out for me in the conversation that are going to really help me in writing about this. Because first of all, even though the sutta says the title says it's mindfulness of breathing, the breathing after the first 2 steps is always paired up with something else. So that means that you're sort of always talking about 2 things at once, the breathing and something else that's happening with the breathing. But even the beginning point, where the Buddha says, the first 2 steps, he says, understand when you are breathing long and understand when you are breathing short. And that alone is sort of an odd instruction. And because it's suggesting that what you should pay attention to when you're meditating is how long is your breath? Is it long or short? And that's something I've never done. And I've never heard any meditation teacher give the instruction to do that. So it's like, well, wait a minute, how do we get started here? And so, Ajahn Pasno said a couple of interesting things about that. One of the things he generally says is, don't get too caught up in the technical language, just kind of let this be intuitive. Like, what does it mean to you to be mindful of your breath? And I think that's an interesting question, but I think that, we do each kind of have to figure out for ourselves, what does that mean for me? He also, though, so one of the things that some of the scholars and, Buddhadasa focuses on this a lot is that, like, the longer breath means when the breath is coarse, and the shorter breath means when the breath gets very subtle. So, again, if you've done a bunch of meditation, you know that at a certain point, when your meditation gets pretty deep, the breath can get quite shallow because you're not really breathing very deeply anymore. You don't really need to. But Ajahn Pasno pointed out that he said, when I started practicing, the long breath was the smooth one because I was using deeper breathing to kind of calm myself. And the short breath was more something that would happen if I was agitated. It was only when I settled in further that then I could see that, I might take a long breath, like catching your breath, or it might be because, some disturbing thought shows up in your, and that the shorter breath. And so immediately right away you see, oh yeah, it's just not, there isn't just this one answer, right? So we got past that, without like an answer, which is good. But I think the place that I found most interesting, and the ones that stayed with me in the last 24 hours, is we were talking about in the second, what's called Tetrad, the second 4 steps of the sutta, where you're talking about Vedana, which is the feeling aspect, the felt aspect of not just of breath, but of really mind and body, mind, emotions. There's the last 2 steps of it say to be sensitive to or experience mental activity or mental formations. And then the next, the 4th step there is calming the mental formations. And so what all of the scholars, and including Ajahn Pasno, say the Buddha is pointing to is 2 aspects of the mind, the felt experience, the Vedana, and then what's called in Buddhism perception, or so the Vedana and Sanya. So Vedana is just the immediate impact of any sense, bodily sense or mental experience of, and whether that impact is pleasant or unpleasant, like painful or, pleasant or painful, or neither pleasant nor painful, like kind of neutral. So this is like a very primal aspect of human experience that we are rarely aware of. But once you understand that every sense experience has a quality that's either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, it makes sense. Because it's like, oh, that's why I like some things and I don't like some things, and other things I don't pay attention to, because I like the things that are pleasant. I don't like the things that are unpleasant. And I don't care about the things that are neither. Just to make that, maybe, simplify it a bit. And then when there is, so in the kind of process of in mental processing, as our mind processes an experience, there is feeling first before there's just the contact with something, and then there's the feeling before we know anything about it, before we know what's happened, before we've had a thought or a realization of whatever it is. We just, that instinctive, like, move toward it, move away from it, that fight or flight kind of, or not fight or flight, but well, sort of, but it's the grasping or pushing away. Very primal, right? Survival. What the next thing in mental processing, and this again usually happens below consciousness or pre-conscious, is perception. That is, we now label this experience based on some memory of having encountered it before. We try to make some sense of it. What's happening? I'm feeling something. What is happening? And then a thought arises. Then we have an opinion about it. Now we have a judgment about it. Now we do something about it. We make a decision about it. Now we're into the conscious mind, like this really quick processing, feeling, perception. Okay, now what do I do? So this is where most of us become aware that something's happening. What's really important about this is to see that point at the end, that end point of a thought or an opinion or a judgment happening, is something that has been conditioned by these previous unseen events. And that we aren't really responsible for them, but they actually point us in all these directions, and they trigger a lot of our behavior. So, for the addict, pretty quickly we can see how this kind of realization, I smell marijuana. So there's all that. What the first thing, that process would be, I don't know what it is, but it's pleasant. I remember that. I know what that is. It's marijuana. Gonna roll a joint. Need to get high, right? I'm triggered by it. So we can see the triggering, right, happens through that. So when we see that it's just a process rather than a demand or a need, like, the fact that I want this joint arose because there was a pleasant reaction to a smell and a memory of what that was, and a habitual way of responding to that smell, and a craving that comes up, and all this stuff gets created out of it, right? And you can go, I don't have to act on that. I can let that go. Ajahn Pasno gave the example of like a racist reaction, where that you might not be consciously racist, but then you notice you're walking down the street and you see several large Black teenagers dressed in a way that you've seen them dressed on TV when they were playing gangsters, and you go, oh shit, I'm going to walk to the other side of the street. And you're like, wow. But if you watch that, you realize, that was just like a conditioned response. This is just some teenagers walking down the street, and my conditioning, my racial conditioning, triggered unpleasant danger, don't, watch out, like, go. and you're like, oh, wow, like that's not reality. You know, that's just my mind creating this thing that was built up by other conditioning. So when we start to deconstruct the Vedana and this moment in the meditative process, the Vedana and Sanya, then we become less controlled by our conditioning and more able to say, oh, you know what? That's just my mind saying this. And again, we might not see it happen. Like we might not see the Vedana and the Sanya, but when the thought comes together and we're like, why am I, this isn't what I meant to do. This isn't who I want to be. Why am I getting so triggered by this? Or why is this craving, oh, right. That's just a conditioned response. So we, talking a little bit about this in the guided meditation, we kind of step out of our habitual ways of operating in the world. And this is how mindfulness, which is the key to all this, right? This is how mindfulness gives us the opportunity to change and to actually recondition ourselves or decondition ourselves, if you prefer. I like the idea of deconstructing my experience and seeing, well, what I think of as like truth or facts or, things that I believe are just these constructed, they're called sankaras, conditioned things. And that then I can step back from whenever I get angry about that with my partner, it always leads to something painful. We wind up having a fight because I get reactive when they do this. And that's just because, and then maybe this is where like your psychology maybe comes in, but kind of as opposed to a psychotherapeutic process where we're interested in like, well, it was our parents that caused it. We're just interested in the process. We see that, through my conditioning, these patterns have developed. And if I see them arising in real time, I can undevelop them and not act on them. So, in such conditioned habitual ways. So what I like about this idea, besides just it's great, is that it helps us to understand what we're trying to do with meditation. Because a lot of time there can be this feeling like I'm just meditating to try to calm down, which is great. But, when you get really calm, and then you're like, well, this is great. Like, why am I doing this? Like, oh no, start to watch. Because you need to be fairly calm before you can see this. This isn't something you can see like just in an ordinary mind state because things happen too quickly. But if you get in a concentrated space and you're in a quiet space and just notice like, oh, look, wow, look at where did that thought just come from? Oh, right. Oh, memory. Oh, there was a feeling. Oh, there was a sound, and you start to see how things are constructed. And this is the real value of mindfulness, that it brings us insight in this way. So I hope that's helpful for people. So thank you for listening. And we have a few minutes left. If anyone wants to chime in, share anything, or respond, or ask a question. So I see that Angela has put in information for offering dana to me. Thank you. And the information about our contact list. You can join that if you just click on that Google Docs link. And Mike, hello.
Hey, Kev, it's Mike from New York. I'm Mike. I'm an alcoholic. And I very much enjoy these meetings. I'm so glad that you're keeping them going. And when you were talking, you reminded me of several things. First of all, concerning the sutra part, as you said, in the beginning of it, it's kind of baffling. It's almost like he goes, so monks do a short breath. When you do a short breath, you'll know you're doing a short breath. But there's no instructions associated with that. It's just kind of out there. And, maybe you will, maybe you won't. And when you were talking about the conditioning, it reminded me in the 10th step of the famous phrase, whenever I am disturbed, no matter the cause, there's something wrong with me.
Right.
And it really doesn't matter what's going on outside. If I am disturbed, if I am not happy, if I am not hitting on all cylinders, however you want to put it, then I need to take a look at that. And the only way that I can really effectively, in my experience, take a look at it, as you described very eloquently, is the 11th step, this practice of mindfulness, this awareness.
It's true.
And understanding it, being at least aware of it, and lastly, I just want to say that, you were talking about, pulling these various things together in a kind of a meaningful way. And, I don't mean to flatter you or pat you on the back unnecessarily, but I think you were particularly gifted in being able to do that, in being able to tie this whole concept of mindfulness back to, addiction and alcoholism and all that sort of thing. I think you're very gifted in that, and I really appreciate your work. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. It's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it. Oh, wow. Thanks for Angela putting in the information about my new book. That's good. My new old book. And someone asked, Gail asked if the monks are allowed to use sewing machines. A really good question. We'll have to ask him when we're up there. I'm not sure. They don't. They use modern conveniences. As I was talking to Ajahn Pasno, he reaches into his robe and pulls out his iPhone and starts looking up suttas on his iPhone, scrolling through. Oh yeah, and here and here's this different translation here. He puts it back in his robe. I love that. Hi, Charlie. Nice to see you, man.
Yeah, great to see you too, Kevin. Have you read Ajahn Susito's new book, Breathing the Life of a Buddha? Breathing Like a Buddha.
I have been looking it over. Yes.
Yeah. What do you think?
It's a little. I mean, I'm a little overwhelmed already with 4 books, and I don't quite have the language. I'm not sure what to say. It seems like it's a little. He's very poetic, kind of, maybe a little more abstract. I'm not sure. I haven't. I'm not sure I can. It's something I can take anything out of. He's a really amazing person. I just didn't. I haven't clicked on it yet. What's your impression?
I haven't really read it yet. Downloaded it, and I really don't like reading downloaded.
Yeah.
So I was waiting for it to come out as a book.
Yeah, they have it up at Abhayagiri. I got a copy when I was at Amaravati this summer, and it's.
I sat at a retreat with Buko and Alio on mindfulness of breathing, and that was really powerful.
Yeah.
And also, I did a year-long study with Gil Fonsdale on. That was, and very different approaches too. So I really liked what you were saying about kind of taking these different approaches and kind of just, making them, suiting them for yourself, and that's kind of what I've been doing.
Yeah, good. And that's very much Ajahn Pasano's approach. He says, like, I'm not a scholar, and that's just, he's very much a practitioner. And yeah, I think, I was in Minneapolis, and my friend Mark Nunberg, who's, a pretty senior teacher now and teaches at IMS, he was giving a talk on the Anapanasati, and I sat and listened to his talk. I was like, oh God, like, this is so, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with this. And yeah, that's so the one of the things that I kind of confirmed with Ajahn Pasano, that kind of, I'll say he and I agree on, let's say, is that you can take that practice very, very deep. And if you have the time and you're on a long retreat, you can really go very, very deep on really almost every step of it, like just, and it's very powerful in that regard. And that's the way that I think a lot of times the scholars are talking about it, but that it's also possible to use it in a less, profound way and draw from it tools for daily practice or for shorter retreats. And so I think, to me, it's good to kind of respect those two levels, not sort of demand one or the other, or you just say, well, if you're not on a month-long retreat, forget it. You're not, it's because I have heard talks where I thought, you're giving a talk to people, but you're talking about something that nobody's going to be able to access unless they're on a long retreat. And so that doesn't seem that helpful. So so one of my ways of thinking about this, and that I'm trying to write about it, is these two different approaches to, and as you say, which really means that we each are responsible or have the opportunity to explore this for ourselves and see what's useful for us, take what you need and leave the rest. Rather than, like, at times I can, as I've said, I can be like, oh my God, this is too much. I just don't even, forget it. I'm not even going to try. And that doesn't seem like a constructive use of the Dharma. So, yeah.
Thank you, man. That's very useful.
Thank you, Charlie. I actually really appreciate hearing your comments, given that you've worked with it, because I do have my, insecurities about, so when I get feedback from people that, like, okay, what I'm saying seems to resonate with people who have had some experience with it, then I figure I'll keep working on the project. So.
Yeah, it's like, so, that's a good point, that, like, Book on Audio told me that you just practice this on retreat, and he comes back to, what the Buddha said, that, finding, going into the forest, sitting in the tree. Whereas Gil Fonsdale was saying, no, you can do this anytime, and you can jump into any particular tetrad that you want. If you come in, I'm just going to go to, the fourth tetrad or the first tetrad, it doesn't matter. So they're very different kind of approaches.
Yeah. To me, the idea is, if you're not in deep, that you understand I'm not in deep, but let me see what I can get from this. Can I, in this moment, what would it mean to gladden my mind? Or what would it mean to notice my mental activity? It's all well and good if you're a monk who's, living in retreat 9 months a year, to say you have to be on retreat to do this, but it's not very helpful to the rest of humanity that's out here trying to survive.
Thanks.
All right. I think I'm going to leave it at that, and I've been trying to leave each class with some little reflection, and I think this, to just notice the constructed nature of your thoughts and beliefs. Take that as a kind of daily practice for the next few days. See how that works as a way of just, what am I believing right now? Where is this thought coming from? Just take that as a daily, an occasional just question to ask yourself. So I wish you all a safe, sane weekend.